Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar. We are very excited to have a guest speaker here to really share her experiences and work that they're doing in Puerto Rico and beyond. And so I just wanted to give an introduction to those who are new or not familiar with REFORMA. So it's a ALA ethnic affiliate caucus group that is a supportive national association to promote library information services for Latinos and Spanish-speaking communities. And so my name is Ray Pun. I am the chair of the International Relations Committee. So we have a committee devoted to collaborating and supporting different organizations and partnerships to identify ways for our library community to take advantage of these kinds of engagements. So I just wanted to mention a few things about the charge. We are very excited. This committee is made up of many different professionals, people who are based in Puerto Rico, people who are academics, people who are also very active in the library community. We are really interested in participating and collaborating, for example, this kind of webinar. And we're speaking to currently right now several regional officers from the US State Department in the Americas. So we're finding ways to do partnerships with them. And also a lot of other groups like AMBAC, which is the Mexican Library Association, and International Relations Roundtable under ALA, and so forth. And so our charge you can find online. It's also, we made it in Spanish too. So for our colleagues who might want to collaborate with us from other countries, they can certainly do that. And if you're not a REFORMA member, please consider joining. It's a really great organization. There's a lot of opportunities to network, to build your professional development, and to share resources and opportunities. So that is all I have. So I'm going to pass it to Kat, who is the Deputy Director of Libraries Without Borders. So are you okay with that, Kat?
Yep, I am ready to roll. Let me just share my screen.
Great.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ray, for the introduction, and thank you, everyone, for joining. I'm very excited to tell you about Libraries Without Borders, a little bit about our history, our vision, and the work that we're doing in Puerto Rico. So what is Libraries Without Borders? Libraries Without Borders is a nonprofit organization that is committed to expanding access to life-saving information. So this can look very differently depending on the context. We work in over 33 countries around the world, and we have several key hubs that focus on different regions. So for the United States team, we focus on the Western Hemisphere, Latin America, and of course, the United States. As I mentioned, we work in very different contexts. So in the African Great Lakes region, we are often in refugee IDP camps. In Haiti, we were helping with disaster relief. And in much of the US, we're in laundromats. So we set up pop-up libraries inside of laundromats that focus on specific needs such as legal literacy, financial literacy, health literacy, and basic literacy, of course, and beyond. So I'm going to show a clip about our program in the Bronx.
2 weeks ago, I had a customer that was waiting for her laundry, and
she had a 1-year-old son, and the daughter was 6 years old, and she was just sitting there on her phone taking care of her little brother.
She was asking for like information about scholarships and stocks, and she was really interested in trying to get the ID from New York. So I had to go research it myself with one of my colleagues,
and I sat with the girl and I taught her multiplication.
We gave him like great medical schools, gave her some resources that could benefit her.
And she gave really positive feedback, and she really liked what we were doing.
Lady, just as soon as you walk into the laundromat, she made a turn and right in front of us. Like, what is this about?
So the Washerman program was an idea born out of 3 years of iterating how can we provide resources to folks in the Bronx.
Basically, we stay here in this laundromat and we're like trying to help the community around it and the people that come in here.
Most of the time they leave, or most of the time they just hang out here for like 30 minutes into their clothes dries, and then they're basically not doing anything.
And it's like the perfect time for us to come up to you and kind of like chime in and give you like information you might need.
It's interesting because not enough people do need help and they kind of wait for us to ask them.
There's an overwhelming amount of information, and you don't always know what's the most useful. So it's really helpful to have the students who are from the community go out and figure out what it is that we could offer that would actually be helpful.
We just look for people who are waiting for their laundry, and we just provide them with any resources that they're interested in, whether it's financial literacy, early literacy,
Legal literacy. If they have a child, we can teach them like how to look for scholarships with their child, how to think about college options. Sometimes we have like middle schoolers or high schoolers, so we offer like tutoring websites online such as Khan Academy.
Stuff like Duolingo, Quizlet.
It's crazy because some of these websites we didn't know about, and we're like, oh wait, she's interested in this. I know this website.
Nobody will ever think of coming to a laundromat and get resources out of it.
And I think that when we explain this, everybody's like, oh my God, that's brilliant.
It's great to get back to the community, to expose them to the resources that they may not be aware of.
Like, I've seen everything here. I've seen from the elderly to like the youngest. We don't know one thing, then we just actually help each other out.
So I think that when people see stuff, they usually take advantage of it. If they know what it's about, they take advantage of it. And it's just giving them the opportunity to learn more about it.
Because many people just come to the laundromat to do laundry. And it like connects to the name, wash, learn.
So that gives you a sense of the type of work that we do. We're not always in laundromats, as I mentioned, but we do always work closely with communities to create these pop-up libraries and learning spaces. And much of the work that we do focuses around meeting with local residents, nonprofits, social enterprises, artists, activists, educators, obviously librarians, and others in the community who want to participate in these community building, capacity building programs. But beyond the mainland United States, we began to focus on Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And so, as I'm sure many of you know, several schools closed down, not necessarily because of Hurricane Maria, but it didn't help matters. In addition to financial austerity measures that were put in place, it just complicated that issue. And so over 260 public schools closed. Homes were destroyed and communities were devastated, largely infrastructure and also people facing several psychosocial challenges. So we spent the months after Hurricane Maria going back and forth between our DC office and Puerto Rico, trying to figure out what would be the most helpful tools and training that would allow people to rebuild their lives. As I mentioned, we visited many communities across Puerto Rico. And we tried to meet as many community organizations and student groups, different librarians, teachers as possible to forge partnerships that would enable us to create something that was really co-created with communities and also relevant and reliable. And we spoke with a ton of cool kids. It was incredibly humbling and also just inspiring to hear the stories of kids and the things that they wanted to learn about. And so we made sure to incorporate their interests into what we were going to create and learned about local culture. I myself, as you'll see later, tried to learn how to dance. I wasn't very successful, but that was a part of this process. And ultimately, after several months of conducting these community needs assessments, we were able to set up a pop-up library and makerspace program in 2 communities. So we picked 2 communities where we had strong ties with local leaders, where there was a school nearby that had closed, and so there was a gap, and where there was a very visible, palpable community interest. And so here's a little bit about what we were able to do. So we because we had forged these strong partnerships, we had a plethora of organizations that wanted to bring in their existing programming to the communities where we were working. And so we had a partnership with Scuba Dog Society, an organization that raises awareness about marine health and other environmental issues about how to protect the environment. And we also hosted a number of workshops and modules on STEM education, emerging tech. We had even a workshop about blockchain technology, which, as you can see in this picture, there were children under the ages of 10 learning about blockchain and cryptocurrency, concepts that I still to date do not fully understand. But we had such incredible volunteers, and in that picture there's my friend Manuel Pons, who attends UPR, and he was able to break it down for the kids in a way that was not only understandable but really relevant. And we also had a number of virtual reality demos for kids, teens, adults, and these covered they covered everything from exploring the universe to looking at ancient ruins to even going into space and creating your own artwork. So it was a very holistic, trying to be immersive through VR technology. I think in this picture you can see a boy who's trying to escape from sharks. So we tried to incorporate that as well in that one too. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we worked with students at the University of Puerto Rico in Maya West. They're part of a student organization called EPIC, and they have a makerspace program. So these students not only volunteered to lead workshops, but actually brought equipment from the university to our sites in Loíza and La Perla, set up laser printers and 3D printers, or laser cutters and 3D printers, and demoed how to use them, not only for building toys, as you can see in the picture where they made some castles and keychains and other trinkets, but also for things like repairing a chair that has a broken leg, or if something, I think they had handles that they showed the students demonstrated how to repair. So it was meant for kids to pique interest and for parents to show relevance. And we did, as I mentioned earlier, we partnered with Scuba Dog Society. We talked about water quality, microplastics. We did some dancing. And we enjoyed some incredible books that were kindly donated by the University of Buffalo. And this is something that I cannot stress enough. Through a partnership with that university, we were able to get over 200 books donated, all in Spanish. And so the ones pictured here are kind of the popular ones that a lot of folks remember from childhood. But we also curated a list with librarians in Puerto Rico of books, of children's books that either talked about Puerto Rico, its history, its culture, or were written by Puerto Rican authors. And I think this was absolutely key because it engaged folks in the community at a different level. It was very hyper-local and personalized. And I think that really added a special element to the program. And so we also had the community teach us a thing or two, as I mentioned, from dancing. We also had this man pictured here taught us about the drums that are used for the dances. And so here, not only did he go into the history, but he actually played for us. And then he showed us the differences between the drums, the sounds they make, and how he hoped that this would be a tradition that would carry on into the future. And so it wasn't a top-down learning environment. It was very much everyone learning from one another. And that was also, I think, why the program was so successful. And depicted here is a friend of mine, Gustavo, who is a social entrepreneur in Puerto Rico. He received a number of job offers upon graduating from college to work in the financial sector in New York. And he decided that he was going to stay in Puerto Rico. And then Hurricane Maria hit, and his life now has become to really support the entrepreneurial landscape. And he wanted to share his story with the kids and their parents, and to kind of, serve as a spark to ignite their interest in this field and to make them think that anything was possible. So we continued to work with our partners throughout the summer to figure out how we could bring this to other communities beyond Loíza and La Perla. And ultimately, we decided that we were going to redesign our pop-up library, because the one that's depicted, it comes from Paris, and it's quite heavy and quite expensive to bring anywhere. I'm going to go back to that so you can see the redesigned one. And so this is designed, that model is designed by Puerto Rican architects and actually a psychiatrist, and it will be completely hurricane resistant, solar powered, and manufactured in Puerto Rico. And so now what? We're in a lull in the program because we closed out the summer pilot, and we've been working with the Rotary Club of San Juan and a number of Rotary clubs actually in California and Washington, D.C. to help us continue the program in the new year. But the pop-up library is still in Puerto Rico. And so we want to continue these initiatives, and we're in the fundraising phase, but we also want to continue to connect with librarians, information professionals, folks in this space to help us continue curating the materials, the books, also lessons, because there's a lot of interest in bilingual education, incorporating that into the pop-up library and makerspace programming. So if you want to get involved, I'm including my contact information here and Libraries Without Borders. The first one is our Twitter, the second one is our Instagram, and our website is right below it. But we're always looking to work with librarians and teachers and educators in general. And I think that as one person, as the sole representative of Libraries Without Borders in Puerto Rico, it was a bit difficult to run the program, fundraise, and connect with other folks all at the same time. So if folks connect with me, it often it's more likely to happen. So I really appreciate your time, and I wanted to also open it up for questions. Ray, not sure how you want to do that, but I can field any questions that folks have.
Sounds good. Yeah, if you have any questions, please feel free to type in the chat box. That'd be helpful.
The new pop-up panel? Yes, let me try to pull that. So I'm gonna go back. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how to just show the images, but I'll move this out of the way so everyone can see it. And then, I'm trying to figure out how to pause that, but I'm not sure. But here you go. You can see it here.
So there was another question about the chapter of Libraries Without Borders in other parts of the country.
So there are no chapters. We have our U.S. office, which is based in Washington, D.C., and then we have the headquarters, the international headquarters, which is in Paris. We also have offices in Belgium, Jordan, and we will have one in Bangladesh. But the ultimate goal is to open one in Puerto Rico, because with the redesign and manufacturing of this new ideas box, the new pop-up library, it's going to become a hub that will allow us to ship the pop-up library to other places in Latin America much more easily. And I see that most of the activities seem to be centered in the East Coast. That is true at the moment. We do have programs in Minneapolis, St. Paul, in the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area. We're starting a program, fingers crossed, in Oakland and Southern California, and also in Charlotte, North Carolina. But these are all in the works. And we have ongoing programs in Detroit, the Bronx. We have one in Providence, Rhode Island, and also I will be launching one in Baltimore next month. But yes, we would love to expand across the country.
Kat, is this the program? I might be getting it mixed up because I know there was another Libraries Without Borders that supports trips to Guatemala and Panama for like a 1 week service trip. This is not your initiatives, right?
That's not something that the U.S. team oversees, but that brings up you brought up a great point, because one of the things that I'm currently trying to get off the ground in partnership with different universities, and actually some high schools have demonstrated interest, is to create an independent, every university calls it something different, but it's essentially an optional course that would be similar to like global health brigades or global medical brigades, but about libraries and maker spaces to prepare students who are interested in not giving up, but using their spring break or other vacations to help us with the programming in Puerto Rico. And so rather than just make it like a volunteerism type of thing, we want to provide a course that actually talks about Puerto Rico's history, culture, music. We want to invite chefs, dancers. So it's an ongoing, maybe 6 to 8 weeks. All of this is being still negotiated and decided with the universities to provide a holistic view before students get there, and to properly train folks as much as possible beforehand so that they can maximize their ability to give back. And so we are trying to coordinate these service trips. And if you are with a university or institution that would be interested in getting involved, please do send me an email, because I would love to connect with you and kind of create a network of these service trips. Oh, great. Yeah, so I can talk more about how the ideas box wasn't quite right for that context. So first and foremost, the ideas box was designed for the first ideas box was made in 2014, and at the time it was essentially the vision of the French designer Philippe Starck, and he wanted it to be this brightly colored, which I love, modular unit that would be incredibly durable and to withstand conditions in places that were affected by natural disasters, refugee camps, so to make it really sturdy. But in that process, it's incredibly heavy, and it's still not necessarily hurricane resistant, and it's not solar powered. So these were things that when we were actually setting up the library in Loíza and La Perla, it was so difficult for our volunteers to lift the boxes. It became expensive to even rent transport for the box. And so we had to really sit down and think about, okay, well, what about the pop-up library is important? And so we connected with an organization called Parallel 18 in San Juan, and they are I think they're an accelerator incubator for social enterprises. And we met there an organization called HiveCube, and I think their logo is featured in the presentation at some point. But HiveCube is an organization that's making more affordable housing, and they are founded by 2 Puerto Rican women. One of them is an architect, and the other one's a psychiatrist, and they worked with us, or we worked together rather, to really look at the elements of the ideas box that we wanted to keep. We for sure wanted to make sure it was hurricane resistant and solar powered. And right now we're working with the Puerto Rico Science Trust and Response Innovation Lab to figure out the best connectivity solution, because the satellite connection that our ideas box has in other sites around the world isn't the most reliable, and it's also quite expensive. So it's not the best use of money, and it also adds a lot of weight to the unit. So we're trying to figure out if we can find a more reliable, lightweight solution that provides connectivity, because internet access is absolutely critical to a lot of the programming that we do. While we have some offline resources, and they are a part of every pop-up library that we set up, we do want to provide opportunities for communities to access the internet. We had the University of Buffalo Law School come and help folks with FEMA claims, and for that, the internet connectivity was absolutely key. Oh, there are a few more. Okay, so as far as partnerships that you forge with programming at the pop-ups, is there a need to be more critical of what they offer, and if it is in line with the goals of LWB? Let's see. I certainly think that I became more discerning over time about who I partnered with. It wasn't. I also, as I mentioned, I'm one person, but I also know that in the process of working with the Rotary Club of San Juan, we were advised to make other strategic partnerships that would allow us to access, for instance, with HiveCube, to be able to leverage their existing model for the pop-up library redesign, and also with Puerto Rico Science Trust. They were a very key player in connecting us with other organizations that they personally funded, so we're their grantees, and this served as kind of a filter for us. So essentially they could vouch for these organizations because they funded them, and that was very, very helpful for us in discerning who we wanted to partner with. So participants, volunteers from Libraries Without Borders are not necessarily librarians. In our programs in the mainland US, the facilitators are almost always librarians. We do have volunteers that are students, which you saw in the video from the Bronx, and they get trained by Libraries Without Borders staff and librarians on best practices from our other initiatives, but essentially on how to answer folks' questions and direct them to potential answers, but also always emphasizing that, you know, the local library, your local librarian, your local library is also a repository of information and services. So our goal is really to expand and amplify the reach of libraries. And so we always work with the local library in the mainland US. Now, this was a bit more difficult in Puerto Rico because I met with librarians, but there was just less flexibility or ability to work with folks. But it's not because we don't want to, just it was less feasible for us to make it happen on the dates that we ran the program. And it's something that I would really love to change because I want to incorporate librarians as much as possible into the pop-up library program in Puerto Rico. The company that's working on the Ideas Box is called Hive Cube, and it's all one word, HIVECUBE. So Hive Cube, and I can send that to the group. Oh, I can type it in. Yeah, here we go, Hive Cube.
So I'm curious about your own like background. How did you get into this? Like, what was your sort of interests early on that got you into working with Libraries Without Borders?
So I've always been interested in education broadly. My background was in early childhood education. I used to work for the National Head Start Association, and then I moved on to work representing historically Black colleges and universities. But I then thought perhaps, oh, this education thing is a phase, and I thought I wanted to be a diplomat, so I went to diplomacy school, and that helped me to realize that, oh, what I loved about the idea of being a diplomat is learning about other people's cultures and traveling and immersing myself in those different international contexts. So I ended up living abroad for a bit, getting a law degree abroad that helped me focus on human rights and education, and then came back and the timing aligned well, where I had done a fellowship with the current executive director of Libraries Without Borders. He posted the opportunity, and it was as if the stars aligned, because this was a role that would allow me to fulfill my passion for education with my love for international travel and cultures, and the law, because a lot of the advocacy work that I did early on was really fighting for the fact that access to information and education is these are human rights, and people need to be able to have them. And so it was just as if the stars aligned.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. I was wondering if you could just post your contact again on the.
Yep.
So we could.
I'll put it in the chat. And my personal one is right below it.
Great. So I'll just leave a couple of more minutes. If there are any other questions, please feel free to ask. We're just happy to have Kat here to speak on this project and to offer recommendations or suggestions for opportunities if you're interested. I'm guessing everyone's excited that it's Friday. So, well, if there are no other questions, please join me in thanking Kat. Thank you so much for speaking, and I'm so happy we were able to have you, be our first sort of speaker for the webinar series for REFORMA's international group.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. I know it's a Friday, so I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and the recording will be sent to you if you registered. I'll share with you too as well, Kat. And it will be in the REFORMA website, and you can watch it from there. Have a great weekend. Thank you all for joining, and just take care. Bye.
Bye.